Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into Chamber Chat Live here on Facebook with the Tri-County Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Bill Vitiello. I am the Director of Institutional Relationships and the Director of Marketing from the Victory Bank in Limerick. Thank you so much for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. Welcome to Season 6, Episode 26. I'm just kidding. That was for Danielle because I told her I would forget what episode we were on. They all seem to run together, which is all good. So, thank you once again for joining us. The president today is out of the office, so we will not be having a from the president's desk as she normally signs off on. I'm sure you'll look forward to getting one of her emails in the near future, but we also have some in-person events that are coming up. Things are starting to reopen. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. We'll get back to networking again. So Drew, if you wouldn't mind bringing in today's guest, we actually had an attorney from this very same office, from Dischell Bartle and Dooley, but my guest today is a little bit different specialty. Her name is Liz Billies. So Liz, welcome to Chamber Chat Live. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So I see you're in the conference room over there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was telling you earlier, I didn't want to show anyone the dead plants that I have let, during, I think a lot of us can relate to coming back to offices where any plant life was long gone for a while now. So I thought that the conference room would be a little bit nicer of a backdrop for the audience.
Yeah, I had some succulents that succumbed to the pandemic earlier this year or last year, I should say. So I think
I was just sitting in there this morning, like, okay, I got to go to the plant store. We have to redo this. This is looking really sad. I have a really nice windowsill usually that I would have shown you, but for the lack of greenery at this point.
Right. Gotcha. So for those who aren't familiar with Dischell Bartle and Dooley, can you give us a little bit of a history, please?
Sure. So we have 3 locations. Our main location is in Lansdale, and that was where the firm was started by Mark Dischell. And then there's Frank Bartle, who unfortunately did pass away in November. Another part, and then Jack Dooley were the 3 partners of the firm. Our website is right here. So that is what you're seeing right now. That's our team, unfortunately minus Frank. So we all specialize in different areas of law. So I specialize in family law along with Mark Dischell and Ina Matteries. We have lawyers. You had Eric Fry on earlier. He does real estate. We have personal injury, Social Security, workers' comp, civil litigation, zoning, estate planning, you name it. But we all specialize in what we do. So we are able to provide our clients with a full service practice, but you're maybe working with a few different attorneys, but we're able to utilize our expertise for the holistic benefit of our clients. So as I said, I work out of the Lansdale office. We also have a Pottstown office located downtown Pottstown. It's a really beautiful building. And then we also have a location in Boyertown as well, where we have a full-time attorney in that office too. So we are able to meet the needs of the entire county wherever you live. And obviously living in this increasingly virtual world that we all learned about, we're obviously also available via email and Zoom and phone and all of that to help anybody with any legal needs that they have.
Sure. And I would definitely say, and thank you to Drew for pulling up your website, because it's one of the better websites that I've seen.
Thank you.
I don't know who does that for you, but there's a lot of information on there. So I would encourage folks, even if they just had some curiosity about your firm, to definitely go to the website. Again, there's profiles of each one of the attorneys. There's a little bit more of an explanation about each discipline that you guys practice law in. So it's a good place to visit. So let's get to what you want to talk about today.
Okay.
And it's interesting, when I receive this information, I'm thinking to myself, well, that's not really a topic that I think we've ever talked about on Chamber Chat, for one. And then 2, I don't know if it's a topic that people really even want to talk about or explore. And we're going to talk about prenuptial agreements. Okay. And as an audience, before you may tune out of this episode, I would encourage you to just listen, because Liz did provide some talking points of what she wanted to go over here. And I think there's information in here that even if you don't have a prenuptial agreement, there's going to be some information points in here for you that just may inform you a little bit better for the future as well. So, so Liz, I'll kind of turn it over to you. Did I describe that okay? Was that?
You did. It's funny. I was thinking recently, as the world is opening up, and you mentioned that in your intro about how there's more in-person events, there's also more weddings happening. I've had, just anecdotally, my prenup, people have more been coming for prenups. I've had friends who've gotten engaged, planning weddings now that in-person events like that can happen. So I did think it's timely seasonally. It's also timely because we are seeing a rise in prenups for various reasons, and we'll get into that today. I also thought about, okay, well, what would chamber members, not just, they may say, I'm already married, I don't have a prenup, I'm not planning on divorcing my spouse. How is this relevant to me? Or I am planning on getting married, but I don't think I have anything that's worth having a prenup. The answer to that is no, and we'll talk about that too. And then also, because we are, businesses and perhaps business owners are going to be on the live or on the replay, I wanted to specifically gear to it also for business owners and why it's relevant and helpful for a business owner to have a prenup. And then finally, people think of prenups, they just think of divorce, but it's also an estate planning tool. And so you don't have to be thinking about, I'm going to divorce my spouse and how unromantic it is to get a prenup. I was already thinking that there's going to be an end, which is usually what I hear from people. You can also use it as an estate planning tool, particularly for people that are in a second marriage situation and have children from their first marriage. And we'll get into that today as well. So it is more relevant to people than they think. Also, maybe it's not relevant to you and your spouse, but if you've got kids who are, getting, in a marriage age or contemplating getting married either now or even 10 years from now, this information could be helpful to impart upon them as they go off on their journey, with a new spouse. So it really is more relevant to more people than I think people realize that it is. And so that was how I wanted to tailor this conversation today. Speaking to an audience who may be reluctant to see how or are not sure how this would apply to them. I'm like, yes, it does apply to you, and we'll talk about that today.
Yeah, and you make a good point about the estate planning. As a banker, I see estate accounts all the time, and it's just one of those things where emotions are still pretty raw, and the family's still trying to get things together, and with the lack of a plan, it just makes things that much more difficult. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about that. So
yeah, so it's been interesting. I've come to the estate planning angle more and more recently. As I think, second marriages are a little bit more common, just in society. The estate planning piece has gotten more relevant to my discussions with my clients than I think it even did a couple of years ago. Maybe just people are they're looking at that angle, and I'm also looking at that angle even more.
Mm-hmm. So are you also hearing, and maybe this isn't the place to ask the question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Sure.
I read an article or saw a program on this topic of gray divorce, right?
Yes, very much so.
Do you want to describe that, or you want me to? Or?
Sure, no, I can describe it. So gray divorces are definitely, I want to say that term probably came about 5 years ago. I started seeing a lot of articles, probably similar to the one that you read about what a gray divorce. I also, even our the legal industry, were providing with more seminars about a gray divorce. So a gray divorce is people that are getting divorced generally over the age of 50, gray hair.
Or no hair.
And that is, or no hair, or less hair, right? So that is what the gray divorce is really speaking to: an older person getting divorced. Generally, they're perhaps close to retirement age, or even have already retired. Their children are grown. There is not the custody and the child support issues. Their children are emancipated. So we're really dealing with, it's a different dynamic in the divorce discussions, whereas maybe a younger couple would be concerned about college, they're getting the custody issues with their children, where the kids are going to go to school, and they're less worried about their retirement. Whereas in people in gray divorces, and you're going to see this a lot in the financial industry, is when we do a divorce of an older couple, they're worried about their Social Security benefits, their retirement. How much retirement am I going to be left with when the assets are distributed? Coming up with a financial plan for the end of their life. health concerns are often more relevant than in people who are younger getting divorced. What kind of what kind of insurances do I need? What's my medical insurance situation? So the gray divorce is definitely, it's on the rise. I'm seeing statistics about, how they've increased. And I think you often see, all the kids have grown, they've gone off to college, and now people are turning to each other and, do we still want to be in this relationship, or do we want to go our separate ways? And that's often when you see a gray divorce, particularly.
Yeah, and it's interesting already. We've been on the air 11 minutes, and you can see the value that Liz and her team can provide. You can tell that, fortunately and unfortunately, they do it quite a bit. So the knowledge level is pretty high.
Yeah,
and I can tell you, as you go through life too, you think as an individual or as a couple, you think you gain a lot of knowledge along the way, right? The older you get, the smarter you get, but you can't know everything. And that's why somebody like you is there to give advice.
And I always tell clients, people we can make many jokes about lawyers, many jokes about divorce lawyers. And my philosophy is that, getting divorced, the biggest fear is the fear of the unknown, of your money. That's why a prenup can help take out some of that fear. However, if you don't have a prenup, the fear of the unknown, what assets am I going to receive? What's my income situation going to be? Where am I going to live? Where are my kids going to live? And our philosophy is that we are trying to take out the fear of the unknown as much as we can. Now, we can't get rid of it all. But we can take it out by providing you and our clients with this kind of information as much as we can, and leave your problem at our doorstep, and we can take care of it for you, and give you, at least empower you with the knowledge of what is going to happen to you. And I find, we had a client recently just say, I just feel like I can leave my problem with you and relax now. And that's our goal. Even if it's not going to, everyone wants 100% of the assets and maybe a pink unicorn. Well, I can't necessarily get you that, but I can at least take away the unknown feeling out of the equation for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liz, just to let you know, I think your Wi-Fi signal may be a little bit weak, but we can still hear you very well.
Okay, so good. Okay.
We'll keep proceeding. The folks that are watching, we would encourage you, if you have any comments or any questions for Liz while she's live here, please go ahead and message us on Facebook so we can answer them live for you. For those who are going to watch this recorded, syndicated across all the channels that we distribute to, we will provide Liz's contact information, so you can reach out to her if you have any questions as well. So, all right. So go ahead and continue. I know you had a lot of talking points here. So
yeah. So I have a lot for prenups. If we don't get to them all today, there's some kind of fun topics at the end that I think people that are kind of more newer things in prenups. So we don't get to those. They're not as important. They're very hyper specific, but I thought they were just fun. So if we got to them, we could get to them. Things like pet nuptial agreements. I have 2 dogs myself, and that's kind of a fun topic, but we can get to that. That's not necessarily what everybody needs to know, but if we have time, we'll talk about those. So the first is, and I kind of talked to you about it before, is, well, why are we talking about prenups? And we are definitely seeing a rise in prenups. The hook is the millennial generation is more willing to get a prenup than our parents and our parents' parents. And why is that? Well, I think millennials, as the statistics show, are getting married later in life. So they have stuff. They have 401ks. They may even own a home. They have sizable bank accounts. Maybe they have stock from their employer. When people were getting married at 20, 21, 22, they didn't have those things yet. Now people are getting married, 30s plus, and they've collected some assets. And so they want to keep what was theirs, and, perhaps, don't want to share their stuff. And so when you have things, you think about, well, I've worked for it. I had a financial plan for myself. Now I'm getting married. And so I want to preserve what I had as my financial plan. Also, as we talked about before, there's a lot of second marriages now, the gray divorce. A lot of people are getting married later in life, a second, third time. A lot of those people are very scarred by the divorce process, and I understand that. They do not want to pay someone like me again, another college education cost. And they don't want to go through the emotional trauma of a divorce. And they also, again, when I say stuff, I mean large, assets, financial assets that they want to preserve for themselves because they fought for them in their first divorce. And they also want to preserve them for their children who are from that first or second marriage. And also that's oftentimes when people are getting married a second time, they're both getting married for a second time. They both have kids and they want to outline what's going to happen in estate planning, what's going to happen if we get divorced, so that my children are protected and I'm also protected from the trauma of going through a second litigious divorce process. And then third, a lot of people say, well, I don't have anything, so why do I need a prenup? And I say you still do, because you might have stuff someday.
Right.
For example, like I've got clients who are in medical school or they're starting a business and there's going to be something there, hopefully. And so they think, well, I have nothing right now. I just have student loan debt. I don't have a bank account. But you can also plan for those anticipated assets in your prenup. So no one is too poor for a prenup. I mean, people think that all the time, that they're only for the wealthy, only, the Kim Kardashians, the Kanye West, the Jennifer Lopez's, of the world get prenups. It's just simply not true. I've done prenups for people with all different kinds of asset portfolios. So it is really for everybody. And it's kind of a joke, but it's a lot easier to negotiate money when you like somebody than when you don't. And you like them now because you're getting married. So let's have those tough conversations now. And so everyone thinks out in the open, so that when you guys don't like each other maybe as much at the end, you're not going through that emotional trauma of having to have those negotiations where they would maybe also go a different way. So that's always, kind of how I always try to, tell people or encourage people to get prenups for that reason. Is that it's a lot different of a negotiation than at the end when people see me.
I was just going to do a quick comment. You're right about emotions, right? Because they could either be really high, good, everybody's in love, and then it could be completely opposite. And you're right. You don't want situations to be necessarily emotionally driven.
Exactly. And also what often I see happen, I call it divorce amnesia. And some people will agree, oh, that's mine. You will never have to share in that. Or that or yes, I'll put that house in joint names, or I'm going to put your name on that bank account. And then it doesn't, and they never put that in writing. They don't do any kind of, and why would you? You shouldn't live. I always say you should not live your marriage, thinking you're going to get divorced. You shouldn't live like that. But people will make promises to one another, financial promises during the marriage. And then when they're divorced, it's divorce amnesia. I never said that. Well, prenup can get rid of that. You can put all those things in a prenup, and you can have your basic, again, I'm not saying how you're going to pay your water bill. Don't put that in a prenup, but it puts the big stuff in a prenup. And then you don't have to worry about at the end, oh, well, he promised me. Well, it's not, I have someone saying that to me. They promised I wouldn't have to pay for that debt. Well, they're not saying that now. It's not the law. You're going to share in it, and people aren't happy. So that's why I think if you lay your cards out at the beginning of the marriage, you're just better off. One of the things I wanted to mention to people, which I've seen as kind of I don't think people think about as a lovely byproduct of getting a prenup, is I've seen clients have really frank conversations about money that they didn't have and probably wouldn't have had if they got a prenup. They talk about their credit scores. They know what each other's assets are and debts. And a lot of people, they hide that stuff. In a prenup, you can't hide those things. It's full disclosure. That's the law. And so they have conversations about how they want to pay their bills, where they see themselves living. Do we want to buy a different house? They're having those conversations now before they get married, and getting those things out of the way, and not 3 years into the marriage. Oh, I didn't know you had $50,000 in credit card debt. And now we've got the trust issues, and besides the financial issues. And so I have seen that as a lovely byproduct of actually the prenup negotiations, is those people having those really good financial conversations that a couple should be having, even if they were, with prenup or not.
No, communication is so important, and this goes
Yeah.
right along with it. Not only during a marriage, but prior, and as you're getting married too, communication is incredibly important.
Yes.
Okay, what else? What else do you have there? I'm
So,
just keep going there.
so
It's everything good.
great. So let's just talk about what a basic prenup. What is a prenuptial agreement? I think a lot of people hear it on the news. Again, Hollywood, hear what's actually a prenuptial agreement. So a prenup, I'll be using it, is exactly what it says. It's an agreement that's signed prenuptial, so before the marriage. If you do not get married and you have a prenuptial agreement, it's void. It's a contract. It's an agreement, but think of it as a contract that you would sign. You're entering into a contract with your future spouse that in the event of a divorce or death, certain assets and liabilities are going to be divided a certain way. So that's what a basic prenup is. Just to let people know the common misconception, child custody cannot be included in a prenuptial agreement in Pennsylvania, for sure, and probably most states. Child support also cannot be contemplated. A lot of people think, particularly custody, I'll put in there how we're going to have, who's going to have custody of our kids. You can't do that. The court has the right to make decisions regarding, the best interests of the child. You can't take that away. You can't take someone's right to petition a court for that, for them to make that decision in a prenuptial agreement. So it's really outlining, in the event that we get divorced or one of us passes away, how we're going to distribute our property. That's what it's mostly about property, less about liabilities. There are certain things that you need, just like any contract. If any of you, obviously a lot of you on here are business owners, working in corporate settings, you're used to contracts. Think of it as a contract. There needs to be consideration. There needs to be a meeting of the minds, and it obviously needs to be signed. There's also certain things that need to be in a prenuptial agreement to make it a valid prenup. Certain contract provisions. That's one of the reasons, and I think I was going to touch on it a little bit later. I'll touch on it now. Is a really important reason to have a lawyer prepare your prenup. Because if you prepare it yourself off of, LegalZoom or one of these other online, or just trying to do it yourself, you may not include those relevant language that needs to make it a valid prenup. And then if you tried to go to enforce it at a divorce or death and it's not valid, you just wasted your money and you wasted your time. The most important thing in Pennsylvania is full disclosure of your assets and liabilities. So what does that mean? Is that you have to tell your spouse what you got and how much you make, or your future spouse, I should say. So you have to list all of it. Think of it as a financial statement that you would fill out for a bank loan. It's kind of how I describe it to people. It's, what are your assets? How much is do you have a mortgage? Do you have credit card debt? Do you have student loans? Do you own a home? What's the value of the home? Now, we don't have to go out and get a lot of appraisals. A Zillow, value can work as long as there's as best as you can to disclose what your assets and liabilities are. And both parties need to do that, not just the one with the money, the moneyed spouse. If there's one if it's inequity, disproportionate, both parties need to disclose their financial statement. I also always suggest to have your tax return attached as well, so that the income, that's a way to disclose your income, because income is also a consideration when, how you agree to divide your assets, and also whether or not you're waiving your right to any kind of spousal support, alimony, and that is also can be included in a prenuptial agreement. So that's the basics. In Pennsylvania, just to let you know, again, I'm trying to deal with the myths of the non-lawyers out there, is that someone handing you a prenuptial agreement on the day of your wedding and you signing it is not a reason to say it's not valid. Someone saying, if you don't sign this, I won't marry you, and you sign it anyways, that's not a reason to have it declared invalid. There been case law mostly in the 80s and 90s about that, and it really comes down to whether or not there was full disclosure, and or if there was something that was supposed to be done in the agreement and it wasn't done, a material thing you agreed to, could also be a reason to say a prenup is invalid. Obviously, our goal here is to have a valid prenup. Otherwise, again, you wasted your money. And that's why I think it's so important for a client to hire an attorney, to consult with an attorney to prepare the prenuptial agreement, because if you don't do it right and then you think it's valid and it ultimately is not, then you're just back to having, you're going through the litigation as if it didn't exist. And maybe you made certain financial decisions based on that prenuptial agreement being valid. Now it's not valid, and now you're financially, and it's a legal term, screwed. Or you feel you're screwed. So that is that's what the basics of a prenup are. Also, one reason, again, we've got maybe have some business owners who are listening or will listen. So that's often a reason why people want a prenuptial agreement. They're in a family business, either they're, as a shareholder in a family business, they want to make sure that their spouse cannot attack their ownership interest in that family business. And so that is often a reason I see prenuptial agreements. Sometimes the parents of a younger couple or the person who is the shareholder wants it. And so that also is something. So let's make sure that we have the right information in a prenuptial agreement. For a business owner, what do we have of value for the business or for your interest in the business, if it's not a whole, a fractional interest. Making sure that that's in the prenuptial agreement. Are there valuations? Is there a tax return for the business that we can attach? Making sure that it's really clear what your interest is in the prenuptial agreement, because business valuations, I will tell you, on the divorce side are very expensive, and they are usually a reason why a divorce can be delayed for a number of years, because we're going through the valuation process. So for any business owners out there, even if you're starting out in a business, startups are big now. Even if you think your startup, you hope all of them get off the ground and some don't. But if you have a startup, even if it's worth nothing now, you can carve it out in your prenup. So that's why I'm saying, if you don't have anything, you might have something someday. You never know. That startup could be the next Facebook. And let's have a prenuptial agreement that preserves what you created before you were married.
I was going to say, you're right. I'm hoping this is the next, like a Joe Rogan type podcast, and somebody's going to discover me, and I'm going to be sitting on millions. But
you never know.
You're right. You never know. You're absolutely right. And I feel like this could be like a multi-part episode, Liz. You've been really, really informative. So, but we do have a few moments left.
Okay.
So did you want to touch on maybe one of the new topics? And
sure.
I would encourage folks to reach out to you afterwards.
Sure. So kind of going off of the business owner one. So the pets are I'm a dog owner. Anyone's been on my Facebook page for 2 seconds. I love dogs. So just with pets, if you have pets, you can say how they're actually property. You may think of them as children, but they're actually property. They can be included in a prenuptial agreement. But what I'd rather focus on for the business owners out there is, and the people who would like to be business owners, is think about intellectual property, coding, blogs, vlogs. If you own domains, websites, even if you're not, you don't have a blog, but you own website domains, those are all assets. Again, may not be worth a lot today, but you want to include them in your prenuptial agreement. But it's also making sure, okay, what information do I need to include? You want to include, the name of the blog, the name of the domains that you own very specifically. If you have a business that owns those entities and the business is being named, and maybe you attach a tax return, or, if it's a Schedule C, you attach that. Really, even if you think it may not be worth anything, it's better to preserve it in your prenup. But I have this app idea and I've done this much with it. As much as you can, be as detailed as you can in your prenup, because if you're not, and what you've done up to the marriage for that app, if you've done everything and you're just waiting for, a trademark, or you're just, detail that so that you can preserve it as an asset.
Mhm.
I don't think people, again, these are things that may not have a value now, but they may have a value someday. And I think these are newer assets that we're seeing in the age of virtual reality. And so I don't think not a lot of people are going to have them, but when you do, you want to make sure that you're preserving them. And also actually another last topic is embryos as well. If you have embryos, frozen embryos from before your marriage, those are actually also, you can actually also include those in a prenuptial agreement, and what would happen to those those frozen embryos in the event of a divorce, which that's a very hot topic in child planning, family planning. It has been litigated a little bit in the divorce section as well. And a prenup could also touch on those issues. So those are some sort of the hot topics in prenups that I think are interesting. And, again, there are smaller topics, may not be relevant for everybody, but you just never know. And so those are, again, other reasons to get a prenuptial agreement or to deal with those emerging assets.
Yeah, and there's so many different talking points and so many different scenarios here. I mean, I know you could probably go on. I'm looking at even more items on your list here. So, but this has been wildly informative.
Thank
we're
you.
trying to
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure, and thank you for being on. In this season of Chamber Chat, we're trying to provide a little bit more value through education. So this is great that you're coming in at this time. Talking about a very important topic. So
thank you. And I will also say, if anybody else if you have more information about prenups, we do have a couple articles on our website that also some of this information is in there, but there's some additional information as well. So, and obviously, again, reach out to me if you have any specific questions. Yeah,
we will put your contact information in the comments for the Facebook post there. So, Liz, Billies, thank you so much for being.
You're very welcome.
We greatly appreciate it, and hope to meet you in person sometime.
Yeah,
soon.
That would be lovely. Actually, it's interesting. You see people on Zoom, and you're like, I haven't seen you for a year now. So yes, it'd be lovely to actually meet in person, and we can talk about things, prenups or anything else.
Yeah, it was funny. I saw somebody last week, and I go, "You have a face." Because all the other times I'd seen them, they had the mask on. I'm like, oh, you do have a mouth and nose, and yeah. But thank you so much.
I saw a friend the other day say, I haven't seen you in person for a year and a half. This is crazy.
Yeah. So thank you so much again for being a guest today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, folks. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Chamber Chat Live with the Tri-County Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Bill Vitiello. I'm the Director of Institutional Relationships and the Director of Marketing for the Victory Bank. And until we connect again, all my best. Bye for now.